Hi, my name is Russell Lucas. I am a theatre maker and I interview other theatre makers. So I've just spoken to Theo about auditioning. Now I wanted to get somebody on the channel who was going to talk to us specifically about um, the actor's point of view when in the audition room. Now I've existed on both sides of the table as a director and as an actor, and I kind of hope that I've reached a point where I can make the experience enjoyable from the director's standpoint. So I wanted to talk to Theo about what his audition life is like. When has he had particularly enjoyable experiences? What type of things he could suggest for the future that maybe we could all work towards? So yeah, enjoy the interview and click to subscribe. Hello, Theo. How are you?
Hi, Russell. I am pretty good, man. Pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Great to see you again after so many years. We worked together 5 years ago now in 2015 on a piece called Atrophy by Callum P. Crouch many years ago. So it's been a while since we've seen each other. Thank you for coming to talk on the channel.
No, thank you.
Now,
Thank you very much.
no, I'm looking forward to your thoughts as well, because I wanted to have somebody on to talk about auditioning and specifically from the actor's experience. And so you're going to talk to us about that later on. But first of all, tell us, how do you define yourself now? Are you an actor? Are you a performer? Are you a writer? Are you a theatre maker? Because I think these days everybody's quite fluid with their terminology. Like, I tend to call myself more and more a theatre maker, although my main hat has been directing, my second hat has been performing. I now say theatre maker. It seems to make sense to me. So who are you now?
Well, I think I would still primarily call myself an actor, mainly because that's where I make most of my money when I'm making art. At the same time, like, the title of artist, I think is really important to me. Like, for me, there's been an element of trying to reclaim some ownership over my career and not allowing myself to just be like a passive person in the creative process. And I have done some producing and directing alongside my acting work, but I suppose, yeah, acting is what I do most often. That's, the sort of mantle that I carry at the moment. But there's certainly a thing of, like, being like, owning the fact that I'm an artist, not just an actor, has been really important. And I think, yeah, it's something that has to be taken into consideration, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Are you drawn more towards theatre or screen, or are you now finding a balance between the two? What was your initial ambition, as it were, and then where are you at now?
Yeah, well, theatre has always been my first love. It's what I, started acting in school plays. Always loved it, and it was something that I was encouraged to do whilst I was at school as well. But I do always think as well that, like, screen work is where there's something about television that captured me as a young child that has never left me, and I see the power of both of those mediums. So I've managed to do quite well in that I split my time between screen and theatre work quite a lot at the moment. So I average like one big theatre job a year and then a couple of little screen jobs here and there that kind of like supplement what I'm doing. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I have a preference. I think both of them are valid, and, like, there are different things to find in both of them, and I love them both equally. So it's probably where I'd place it.
Just had a you
just a
whoa.
Apologies.
So you're going to talk to us about the audition, I guess the experience of auditioning, because I was interested to talk about from the actor's perspective. I think that sometimes, in terms of the audition process, as actors, we get spoken to about the audition process, so we'll get given tips on how to do it. But having been, a jobbing actor myself and running around London and going to hundreds of auditions, I was interested to unpack that with somebody who does it more than I do now. So let's start on a positive note. What's your could you possibly talk about a couple of enjoyable auditions you've experienced? Maybe there's been a few that you really loved, and maybe tell us why. What was it particularly about those auditions that you liked?
So yeah, I mean, one of my favourite auditions of recent times has got to be my audition for Touching the Void. And the reason I say that is because there was an effort made to sort of prove that we didn't have to be perfect within the room. It felt like the purpose of that audition was finding out whether or not we could work together, rather than bringing a complete finished version of what the performance was going to be. And actually looking back, that's always when an audition feels best, is when it becomes like a conversation between two artists trying to figure out a language to work together, rather than in the traditional sense of an interview where you come in and you're expected to bring the final article. And so like half of that is a mindset shift from the actor. Like, I don't know, I think especially at the beginning of your career, there's an element of thinking that because this is like an interview in the traditional sense for any other type of job, that you have to come with the final product and exactly what you're coming to offer, and that should be the finished article. And actually, the artistic process, one, there's never going to be a right answer, and two, the fun of it is actually in discovering that language together and figuring out what the thing is. And once you make that shift of like, I'm not here to bring you the final product, but I am here to find out whether we can work together, it just frees up the whole experience, and it stops being this like overly anxiety-ridden thing, and it opens you up to I don't know, more creative opportunities.
Yeah.
So for example.
Yeah, go on.
For example, we're Touching the Void. So I had, one piece of music that I had to play, 2 speeches, and I came into that room. They gave me the opportunity to just first sit down, have the chat. I got to pick the order in which we worked on the pieces. There was time spare to kind of rework stuff and talk about what was going on, and like sort of delve into the choices. And it felt less like, like a test for how well can you remember your lines, and more of a like, okay, so if we hit this problem, how would we together find a way to work around that? And I think like a lot of auditioning really is about your mindset. Like Bryan Cranston gives some really good advice on this, where he's like, you can't go into an audition and get a job, but you can go into an audition and like show your art and have an opportunity to make some art in a room with other artists. And pretty much everything else is out of your control. But once you take ownership of the thing that you can do, it kind of leaves the anxiety at the door, because, I mean, you can't control it, so why worry about it? I suppose that's been like, sort of a big key thing.
Yeah, that word test really chimes with me, actually. I think, having been on both sides of the audition panel quite a lot, it's quite a trick to almost jettison that idea that you are facing a test when you go in the room. That's the trick, isn't it? Like you say, you actually want to go in as an artist and say, this is what I have to offer. I really want to work with you and collaborate, etc. And what you hope is that on the other side of the figurative desk is somebody who is willing to collaborate as well. And again,
exactly.
And I think when I have a director's hat on, my priority, I think, is probably to make people relax and have fun and etc. But I'm sure we've both been in audition situations where, like you say, when you're up against a test or a wall, and you don't necessarily get looked at very much. It's a trick, isn't it? Yeah.
It is 100%.
Yeah. So I would imagine you've done quite a few auditions over the years and have got quite a few more to come, because this is it. We're both living the dream. This is the nature of the world, that we'll get a job and it will stop, and then we'll have to find another one. would you think do you think there's like a kind of a, if you could change one thing, or if you could roll out a change as standard, is there anything that, I mean, obviously we're dreaming here because that's not possible, but you know, if we were to send a little thought into the sky this afternoon, what would you think that the industry, inverted commas, could roll out and say, God, if you could just do this, actors would love you. Not that we don't love, you know.
One big thing for me is about getting a definitive no. And the reason why I say this is because it's about, I mean, I think it links back to the same thing about being on the same level as everyone in that process. So especially at the beginning of my career, I remember when I first got signed, I went up for some really big jobs, and the auditions were nerve-wracking but exciting, and I was, you know, prepare really well and go and do the thing. And then you hear nothing, and the next time that you hear about that job is in a casting announcement on a website somewhere, and you had no idea that you were out of the running. And like, you know, as I said before, like, it is a little bit about respect, being able to know that the simple act of getting that no kind of then removes the anxiety from you of waiting by the phone, if that makes sense. Like, and it's not, I don't think it would be much of a shift just to, once you know that somebody is out of the running for something, send them a message and say, thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, it's not gone this way for you. And there are some people who do that, but I feel like on the whole, you're kind of left in this weird limbo that, I don't know, it's almost like a level of respect thing.
Mm.
You know, the courtesy of being told that you're no longer in the running, I think it kind of gives you a sense that your time is still valued. You haven't just been like chaff compared to the wheat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not even really necessarily asking for feedback. I don't think it would be necessarily appropriate to give every single person that you audition feedback, but at least to let them know when they're out of the running, and, you know, give them that, like, I don't know, it frees up your mind to start thinking about other things. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like a closure. There was something
Exactly.
2 years ago, culture, I cannot remember the moment or what happened, but there was something that there was a bit of a tremor in this conversation you're talking about, that so I think some agents have got onto this idea that yes, they will start to give a yes or a no. There was, I can't remember the article. If I find it, I'll put it at the bottom of this YouTube channel. But yeah, no, it sounds like that more work needs to be done on that. That it's nicer for actors to have a clearer outcome, a clearer message after.
Sure. I mean, yeah, and the reason is that obviously a lot of us do a lot more than just acting. And for a lot of us, obviously acting is really the thing that we want to be doing. But in order to plan ahead and just keep your life going, it's difficult when you've got, you know, something that's kind of like hanging up there over you, to make any like forward thinking plans when you're always, I don't know, if you're hanging your hopes on something, you kind of need to know if it's not happening, so you can continue to just, you know, live. So yeah, to me that seems like one of the simplest things that could be done, and it just raises the level of respect that everybody treats each other with as well. Like, my main thing always comes back to, like, try and make everyone equitable within that experience, and whatever you can do to kind of level the playing field in terms of I mean, I say levels of power, I guess it is a little bit like that, to kind of bring everyone to the same space. So
yeah, and I think also there's something slightly related back to where you were talking about the audition atmosphere, is that when I'm a performer as well, or in any situation really, I do actually ask myself, do I want the job? Do I want to work with them? You know, have they behaved, you know, have they met my expectations? I think is really, really important as well. But that's because I'm really arrogant sometimes as well. I don't always take a job just because, you know, it's also I have expectations of the way I want my career and my trade to work out, and You know, I'm very wary of who I work with because I expect humility and respect and creativity and collaboration, etc. And you know, maybe that's useful. So you've actually preempted one of my other questions. Is do you wait by the phone?
I try. If I'm honest, if I really want a job, then there's no way that I can really avoid thinking. You know, I mean, it's going to happen. You're excited about something, you want it to happen, and you're waiting to hear about it. But I do make an effort to try and leave things at the door once they're done. I guess the key thing is that with auditioning, there is so much that goes into choosing who actually gets a role that isn't necessarily down to what you've done in that room. There are so many different factors that go into it. And definitely it was a key shift. I remember about a year after I graduated, where I had to have a little conversation with myself about just leaving what's been done at the door and trying to carry on with your life. Because otherwise you spend all your time living in the past, which isn't useful. And you end up, I don't know, you put too much emphasis on the things that you can't control, and it becomes like a self-esteem thing. Like you've got to try and remove, what is it that I'm really trying to say here? It's quite hard to articulate, but it's about like taking ownership of what you do have ownership of and letting the ownership for those other things be somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
You know, and trying to, well, I think everyone who loves what they do, they take some level of like self-worth from doing it, but you can only really take that from what you have actually done and not the choices that other people make. So I put this in like quite a roundabout way, but I think that's what I mean, is like be proud about what you have done, but don't take choices that actually have nothing to do with you to heart. And it's really easy to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like there's only so much you can do, isn't there? And you've got to let it go. It's the moment the artist puts the painting on the wall. It's just going to go on a wall now, and you know you're going to like it, you're going to love it, you can do whatever you do. You might not buy that one, you might buy that one. It's something you can't almost forecast, isn't it? The decision, and you also it's difficult not to absorb it, isn't it? You know, if you don't get the job, it's quite hard to not absorb that because you've got a balance between a feeling of rejection and also maybe powerlessness, but you've got to let the balloon go, I guess.
100%. And I guess the reason why I say that as well is because there have been times where I've had an audition, done some work, not got the job, but the work that you do in that first audition brings you back into a room later down the line. And that's kind of the point, is that you might go in and do something and not get a job and end up feeling like, oh my God, I did a terrible job. But actually you're remembered for the work that you do. And when it is about artists just working together in a process, suddenly that opens up the opportunity for each audition to actually be something that could potentially lead to something else and not a waste of time.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I think it goes back again to this thing of like, the audition is not the same as an interview. It doesn't quite serve the same purpose. And so if you're able to like split, well, to recognize that they're two different things, it gives you more freedom to be creative in the room, I think. It means that every experience like that is actually worth something. It's not just a waste of your time.
So we have time for one more question. Over the years, what have you learned that you kind of do at every audition? Is there something that you know, was there a crease in your eye? I need to iron that out. And if I do that every time, my auditions will always be better. One of my own examples is that I bought a cheap suit because I realized I was being put up for roles of dad quite a lot, or accountant. And so I thought I need to spend 30 quid at Primark and get a suit, you know. So is it, I mean, that's a really cod example, but is there anything that you do now?
For me, I have to double check my route the night before I go to an audition. Like I had moments at the beginning of my career where I thought I knew exactly where I was going. I would wake up in the morning, have my shower, leave my house, get on a train and then realize like halfway on the way that maybe I didn't know exactly where I was going. And the levels of stress that come with being late and not knowing where you are mean that really it's always going to be difficult for you to provide anything near your best. And the simple thing of just checking your route. I mean, I've had times where I thought I knew exactly where I was going. I checked my route, and you've got a line down on the tube, and you've got to completely change your entire route. And had I not done that the night before, I would never have made it on time. And so all of those little things that you can do to make your day as like stress-free as possible, I think are really important to do. So like that night before prep, yeah, it's just been one of those key things. And it always, I don't know, I feel better when I wake up that morning already having an idea of like exactly where I'm going to be going that day. Just taking that stress out of your mind always frees you up a little bit more in the room, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That would probably be the key one. I mean, it always depends on what it is that you're going up for as well, in terms of what the rest of your prep is. But for me, that's something that I know I can do every audition and I'll be fine. So yeah.
I think it's because when you walk in the room, you want to be relaxed, don't you? And you want to have fun. That's the trick. Exactly. And so if you're sweating and you run down the road and you're in Pimlico and you should have been in Putney, you're like
exactly. It just doesn't.
You know, you're half a person when you turn up if you're not careful.
Exactly. It's just is never ideal. Sweat is yeah, it's a tough accessory to wear.
Okay, cool. On that last sweat note, so much for talking to us today. Really useful.
No, thank you very much for having me, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Goodbye.
Bye.